Today's episode covers a fair amount of ground, so as we go into each part of the episode, I'll display another map on screen to show you the walking path for that section. And due to Lost Judgment cutting off access to a number of streets here in the commercial district, we'll be using footage mostly from Yakuza Like a Dragon to be able to see those sections. We'll start things out just off of the main road that cuts through Chōjamachi, at more or less the area where Yokohama 99 would be at. That office obviously doesn't exist in real life, and this street was chosen with it being the first street west from Isezaki Mall, both places having a big pachinko parlor right next door. We'll pop over here and take a look at these buildings again, and then just a second we'll go across the street and take a look at the Kikona as well as the new Pluto there in-game. You see the giant hotel there that doesn't exist in-game either. And after we take a look at this, there's another thing that's just across the street. In-game, it's a bookstore you can't access, but here in real life, it's a Kanidoraku, something that you see in Sotenbori as well as Dotonbori in Osaka. And now we'll begin making our way west, down towards the Choja Bridge. You can see the pachinko parlor on the left-hand side here, making our way past it. This video has actually been a lot harder to put together than I would have anticipated for an area that, in-game, it's a kind of the Skid Row area, if you're not familiar with the series. It's a part that's a little bit more run down. There's a fair amount of homeless folks that live here, and this is where Ichiban starts his adventure after getting out of prison and almost getting killed. This is where he ends up getting dumped off at and has to rebuild his life essentially from scratch. In Commercial District, in-game is relatively small. There's only the two main streets that cut across it that connect with Isezaki Road there, whereas here in real life, there's about 4 or 5 streets that go north or south there, and there's about 5 streets that go east-west on there as well. It's much, much bigger than I had previously imagined. And much like Part 4, where I was listing only just the one location in the title of the video, but covering a couple of different areas where some of that stuff was located, it's the same way here. With the main street, we're cutting through Chojamachi right now. When we get across the Choja Bridge here in a few minutes, we'll cross back over into Hinodecho where we've been before. That'll be on the west side of the Oka River. When we come back on the east side here, closer to Chojamachi and start heading south, we'll be in Sueyoshicho. And as we start to head east again, we'll go towards Isezakicho, which we'll cover in Part 7, and then cross over into another area called Akebonocho. Sounds confusing, doesn't it? It's confusing to me as I start to piece everything together after the fact, since while I was in Yokohama, I wasn't aware that all these little places were being pieced together into this much larger location. Some of the streets I was mentioning in Part 5 where I thought you could fit 2 cars, I didn't realize after the fact, much like with a lot of these here, coming out of Sueyoshicho and cutting into Chojamachi are one-way streets. That would explain why they're so small. We'll make a quick stop and pan over to the right. Pay more attention to the building to the left here of this larger one that says number 5 Yoshida. In-game, you can see it down there. There's a karaoke place that you cannot access called Karaoke Gangan. In real life, up until about the latter half of 2021, there was a business there called Karaoke Banban that, as you hit that part of the year and go into 2022, the entire building either was torn down or just renovated, but it's been turned into a much more modern-looking structure, and that business is unfortunately now gone. You can add that to the list of things we've encountered so far in this series, where it existed at one point, but yeah, now it's just kind of scattered to the sands of time. In-game, we're coming up to where the homeless encampment is that Ichiban ends up at the beginning of his adventure. We're not quite at that here yet, the equivalent space here in real life. There'll be a larger building to our left-hand side, right about here, that we'll take a look at once we come back across the bridge and go into the second part of our walk. Again, we'll have to come back to another crosswalk here. It is a little bit busier, but across the bridge, and then when you go into Hinodecho station's not too far away. You'll have people most likely coming in off the KQ main line there and heading over this way. Right here on the Choja Bridge now, take a look at the canal. That's something I mentioned previously. It's not the cleanest thing in the world, but compared to how it looks in-game, it's a big, big difference. But I would say that's one of the biggest differences when you start to compare these areas. Hey, that's where we started Part 4. We'll start heading down into Hinodecho. We're in Hinodecho now. Yeah, as you start to look at some of the commercial district stuff, if you're not really familiar with this series, you'll notice that, yeah, it is the Skid Row area. It's a bit rough and tumble. It's broken down. It looks like a lot of older Showa era structures that just have managed to weather the years, but you don't know if they're going to fall apart at any point. Whereas here in real life, there's a little bit of litter here, but that's not too bad, you know. You can't go down there. Well, you kind of can. I think some businesses are able to access that. There's a business a little bit further up ahead as we get further into the real life footage that takes advantage of one of those little landing areas. But yeah, it's a lot more rundown in-game as opposed to what you can see even right now with some of the apartment buildings. We're not near the tracks just yet, whereas the tracks are pretty much there once you cross the bridge in the commercial district. But still, it's a pretty nice area overall. You'll see that really pick up once we get closer to the other bridge here. A lot of bicycles out. Some areas of Japan, they'll have different laws on where you can park your bicycle, and it looks like you can kind of park it anywhere along the sidewalk here. There's more people riding. But yes, some of these businesses right here underneath the tracks, they look relatively new. I think they've been there within the last 10 to 15 years. There's some other ones further ahead, but there's beer bars around here and just regular izakaya, bookstores, art galleries, restaurants. It's a really nice, relatively modern and kind of friendly neighborhood. It seems like it's a pretty night and day difference compared to what we see in game. Just above us are the tracks for the KQ main line. We get a couple glimpses of that train. In game, there's a bridge here as well, although there's less space between the two bridges there compared to what we have to walk here. Near the crosswalk. And another bit of construction that you can see. It's always something under construction, isn't there? And even these businesses off to the side. Yeah, these, I thought they were relatively new, but even going back as far as 2009 in Street View, a lot of the stuff was already here. But it's not uncommon to see a lot of businesses be placed underneath railroad tracks. It's a good way to utilize that space. I hope they got really good sound dampening, though. But I kind of want to mention there's a guy over here, baseball guy. This guy was awesome. I don't know what he was doing, but you know what? He was having fun, man. Yeah, this landing here I was mentioning before, there's another business over here called, I guess, SUP. It's spelled S-U-P. We'll see what they're doing as we go to this cluster of buildings. This is kind of where it starts to match up. Hey, KQ Mainline. Wave to him. See you later. But this cluster right here, this is where it kind of starts to match better with the in-game footage as well as real life. But yeah, SUP has a bunch of stuff over here. They do paddleboarding tours that go through the Oka River and I think out into the bay. I don't remember if they go that far. That explains why you see canoes and everything else placed under here. It's being used as storage, but there's some other restaurants and I believe an art gallery here. I think that's where you see the dancing girl there. I think that's an art gallery. It might be a bar. We do get cut off in the game footage here since they throw a big empty barrier right in front of you. You can't go any further. There's another bridge there and another street in game. You just can't access it, unfortunately. But this is probably maybe the most rough and tumble, and even that I wouldn't consider it. It's still very well lit, and yeah, at no point did I ever feel like I was ever going to be in danger around here. There's people walking through here. I did film a little bit more in this area for the interest of time. And even with some of the streets that are coming up, I had to cut those sections out. So I think I'll end up putting those into a separate video so you can check them out. I shot a lot of footage somehow for this entire area. And as we get to the end here, we'll pop back up towards the Choja Bridge and begin part 2 of our walk. From the bridge, we'll be making our way back east across the Oka River and start heading south down towards Sueyoshicho and a couple of more familiar elements that you see a lot of in the early part of the game. Though the walks along the streets, as I mentioned, there's a lot more streets here in real life compared to in-game. The walk along the streets we're going to take won't match up. There'll be elements that will match up, but a lot of it really won't, and one of the streets I maybe should have walked on, I never actually got footage for. Of all the footage I shot, I somehow didn't get that. But the biggest thing for me was trying to at least get a road that looks somewhat similar and connects down with Isezaki Road in-game. It's Isezaki Mall here in real life. And then also something that would more or less be the southern boundary that would connect down to the southern part of Isezaki Mall and going into Red Light District. As mentioned previously, this big building here, we'll take another look at it, so we'll have to jump ahead real quick. Right here in the corner, this actually was an AM/PM at one point before those all closed up. Any of the ones that remained open are now all Family Marts, but this is the homeless encampment that I was talking about. And you can tell that there is nothing like that here. This building has to have been here for quite some time. It looks not super, super old, but I would say 1970s, 1980s probably. But definitely nothing like the encampment there or any of the things you see along the sidewalk here. We'll make our way a little bit further down and take another look at it from the south side of that. It is one big, large building. Right here at the southern edge, there's a pharmacy. There's also a post office in there, as well as the previously aforementioned convenience store that would have been there. Kind of surprised they didn't keep that, but there's the Family Mart across the way too, and there's a mini stop that's further down the road that we'll see a little bit later as we start the third part of this video. And yeah, we'll stop right around here and take another look at the building from the south side. A lot of other things around here. And once we get past this, we'll go down. You can see the parking garage down there where Conquest ends up happening. We will be there in just a moment, actually. This is a massive difference, but it fits the overall theme that we've seen so far, where this area is nowhere near as run down as what we see in-game. As we make our way a little bit further south, we'll skip past some of this and we'll come down to the car park. This is a Mitsui no Repark location. The company that owns it has quite a few locations throughout the entire country. The building next to it, it's an event space and where a couple of funerals happen in-game. I don't know what it is in real life per se. I think there's a business in there, but certainly it doesn't fulfill the same function. But it's another one of those small elements where clearly the area designers for the in-game world that is Isezaki Ijincho were paying attention to a lot of different things and trying to find elements. I feel like that would encapsulate the area a good bit and are instantly recognizable. Probably more so for Japanese people, but obviously for those of us that live overseas as we play these games and potentially visit these areas, it's something we can immediately recognize. Now in-game, this is where the southern boundary of the area would be. This would be where the map pretty much ends for the commercial district. We're taking a look at the south edge of the parking garage there, as well as here in real life, but we'll take a look here and then we'll continue heading east, and this will pretty much cover what in-game is seen as West Central Street. It becomes West and East Central Street, and that connects down to Isezaki Road and right about where the Gindako is at, the Gindako location for this map, which by the way does exist here in real life. It's a little bit further north. If you go to Isezaki Mall here, it's closer to the big intersection that disconnects the north and south parts of Isezaki Mall there. We'll see that when we get to part 7. But other than that, we'll be continuing to head east here, and yeah, it won't match up to what we see in game, but a lot of it really won't. There's no large businesses or anything else that's included here in the area that would immediately go, hey, by the way. But I think in terms of covering the vibe of the area, I think it does a really good job of that. In this area in general, Sueyoshicho, as well as some of the stuff around it, is a mixture of all kinds of things. There's apartment buildings, restaurants, different businesses like hair salons and whatnot, and a fair amount of businesses run by folks from Thailand, or at least they're catering towards them. There's a supermarket, there's restaurants, there's a couple of massage parlors. Those seem to be reasonably popular, it seems like, but it goes along with the kind of mixture of things you would see around here, and even up back at Fukutomicho, where it was a mixture of here's some restaurants and here's some shops, but also here's adult entertainment options. I assume the massage parlors probably fit into that. But some of it's also close enough to where Akebonocho is at, and that's where we'll see some of the stuff that lines up with the red light district, which was something I had anticipated putting into an extra episode. I didn't think it would probably fit in here. I felt like, you know what, let's go ahead and put that in here because it all kind of starts to blend together right around the area that the commercial district starts to meet up with Isezaki Road in-game. The red light district is literally right there and kind of forms the entire southeast portion of the map. Take a look around here and make sure we don't get hit by no cars. The in-game footage will and has been fading in and out because the streets are a good bit smaller. They stretch on for a decent ways, and you'll see when we get to Isezakicho and Isezaki Mall in real life, that road is significantly longer. But yeah, the Gindako I was mentioning earlier, that is something we will see in part 7. That does exist in real life, but it won't be here as we run into part of Isezaki Mall. And it'll bring this section of the walk to a close. And we'll be hopping back over to where we were before we made the left-hand turn there at the parking garage, and we'll begin part 3 of the walk. And from here, we'll make our way, not really to the southern boundary of the area, but this is to more represent the southern boundary that we see for Commercial District in-game. I mentioned mini-stop before. You don't see a lot of mini-stops around here. There are a couple not too far away from one another. There's this one here, and then when you go north, just a bit past Fukutomicho, there is another one up there. They're not as common in general across Japan, but they do a good job. They have some pretty good rice balls. Yeah, with the in-game footage there, you see that we're back at the southern boundary. And we'll make our way around here, because there are a couple of things to check out. More approximations than anything else as you start to see the Romance Workshop that appears in-game. Which again is cut off. It's all completely cut off in Lost Judgment for whatever reason. They put those garbage trucks there to block access. Which I found was more annoying than anything else because it felt like there was really no reason to go into those areas. There's almost no reason to go to the pawn shop there. I guess more for me, it was like, why cut off access at all? Just keep the map open. But at the very least, recording footage with Yakuza Like a Dragon is significantly easier since you can turn off enemy encounters as opposed to having to rely on extracts to temporarily get rid of them. And an extract that you probably have to work a little bit harder than you really need to in order to access. Yeah, right around here, this would be where Romance Workshop kind of is. Again, it's very much an approximation. It just seemed like, oh yeah, this would be kind of where it is. I don't recall, even when looking at the maps while putting this episode together, seeing any kind of warehouses or anything like this around here. And another thing we'll see in some of the game footage, I'll mention it right now, as we leave this area, we're going to cross the street here, take another look over this way, and as we start to head north again before we take a right-hand turn, you'll see the Hello Work building there. For those unaware of how Yakuza Like a Dragon works, you do all your job class changes, since it's an RPG, at the Hello Work building. And that is a real thing. That is not a building that exists here in Sueyoshicho or Chōjamachi. There is one elsewhere. I'll put it on screen. Since it's a real place, there is one in Yamashita-cho, not too far away from Chinatown, as well as Yokohama Stadium, but as you can see, it doesn't look anything like what you can see in-game. But now we've made a right-hand turn. We're starting to head east again, down towards the southern edge of Isezaki Mall. As we start to cross that street, we're not going to look at anything around there right now, since I feel like that'd be better suited for part 7 of the series. But we'll cross over real quick, and that'll pretty much bring us into Akebonocho, and we'll start comparing some of the stuff you can see in the red light district. Just yet another thing where I thought, damn, they went to this degree to show off and replicate this kind of business. It just continues to amuse me to no end. It's a little bit up ahead on the right-hand side. You'll see it as the in-game footage comes back in. This is another part that's kind of sort of cut off. You can kind of come over here, and the Seiryu clan headquarters is right around here as well in-game. That doesn't exist at all. I don't even know if you could find a building that would look even remotely similar to that in real life around these parts. Maybe elsewhere, but I'll take a quick look around here and turn back around and start heading north. And that'll take us through other parts of Akebonocho and back up towards Chōjamachi. Yeah, most of the Seiryu clan headquarters takes up a big portion of this block, but you can only go so far south, and that's when you start to hit invisible barriers again. And since with the number of streets that you encounter here with all the areas combined, as mentioned, it's about 5 north-south, 5 east-west, the game footage is going to start cutting in and out to be able to let everything kind of catch up to itself. And even if none of the businesses really match up, it does end up capturing everything else, including having a large parking lot. The Like a Dragon series and parking lots, the best of friends. And like with the Red Light District, of course, lots of soaplands, lots of different clubs here. It was early enough in the day, I don't think a lot of them would be open, or if they are, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of people coming in and out of them. And even around this time, I was just kind of like, okay, I got to make my way through here pretty quickly, because I don't know how anybody's going to react to a foreigner walking around in what is essentially a sex district. There's those kinds of businesses around here if they would want people filming around there. But like anything else I was running into, I was trying to do it relatively low-key and being respectful and being pretty quick about what I wanted to capture. And even here, it's a little bit different, but I think you get the idea. No parked taxi cabs anywhere, but I don't know where the hell they would fit. It does start to match up a teeny bit more as we get up to one of the other spots here. You can see off to the corner there with the red lettering on the white sign. The kanji there is Murio Annaisho, or Free Information Center. I don't think that's the business name. I think that's just advertising what it's doing. Based on Google Maps, it looks like this location's pretty well known, but it's all for information for everything around the area. And yeah, there's a lot of 18+ businesses here in Akebonocho, but like with other nightlife areas we've looked at, there's restaurants, hair salons, other businesses that you might see. And even some of the facades here match up pretty well. And off to the side here, at least in Lost Judgment, you can access one of the underground casinos to go play Hanafuda games. I didn't go too far into this area because it looks like it was either going to hit the entrances to buildings or people maybe live around here. I don't know. With the way buildings are mixed use here in Japan, you never quite know. I figured, you know what, that's good enough. At least nobody was getting in the way in real life. The one bad part about Yakuza Like a Dragon having your teammates follow you around all the time, I feel like they get in the way 9 times out of 10. We'll take a right back here and make our way north. We'll take a look at some of the sites as we start to wind things down. Yeah, this was a bit of a challenge to put together in terms of trying to keep it within a reasonable length. I know some of these videos have been kind of long, and there's a lot to cover on this, as mentioned, for an area that didn't seem like it would be that hard to put together, trying to figure out a pathway to show you and have it still be somewhat interesting, match up to the game footage pretty well. Out of some of these, like some of the pathways and areas that I was checking out, it's kind of a slam dunk putting them together. Like the park, obviously really easy. It's larger than it is in game, but everything that you would need to see is there. And even an area like Fukutomi-cho or Noge-cho, all those are a little bit smaller, but for some reason, Commercial District, it wanted to be the challenging one. But covering this area in this video, it will be the same way in part 7, since we haven't covered Restaurant Row yet. And that'll be a part of that video, and we'll talk about that a little bit. What I was able to find, or what little I was able to potentially find on that. But that'll be for another time. But this is bringing us not too far away from Chōjamachi again, and very close to the end of the video. So I hope you guys had fun walking around with me today. As I've made this series, I've had a lot of fun being able to show off all these areas to you and try to make the comparisons, and it's been a blast. It's been frustrating too, but it's definitely been a blast putting all this together. But with this ending, we only have one more episode to go. We'll see how things end up there. But yeah, if you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. We'll take a look around here and then we'll pop back over towards the parking garage and bring this episode to a close. Thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate the comments and the support from everybody. And until next time, as we enter into the finale of the AFC Presents Yokohama series, take care, thanks again, and we'll see you again soon as we continue to explore around Yokohama. Join us next time for the finale of AFC Presents Yokohama, where we'll finally be taking a walk down Isezakicho.